Hello everybody, this is going to be a pretty short video, I think. It's going to be on writing the method section. And so there's basically two parts to this. I wouldn't really call it a lecture, an overview. One is highlighting what information I've given you for each of the studies. So if you go under the module for week number 5, which you're here already because this lecture will be here, you're going to use the information that's given here for whatever study that you've chosen to do. So if you're doing the attachment study, here's the attachment methodology. You can look at it. It basically is going to say how big the sample was, the assessments, the interview, the personality assessments, the other measures, including citations for those measures. That should be enough for you to construct a method section, and I'll do that. I'll talk about how to actually write it in a little bit here. The emerging adulthood. So if you're using that data set, I think there's only a few people actually in the class that are doing that. There's two things. There's a description of the study, so sample sizes and whatever procedures they use to collect their data, and then here's the questionnaire. That should be enough information to write the method section for you. For the people that are doing the job applicant study, there's a document here that describes the methodology. And then for the trans study, the methodology is here. Fairly well described in terms of the sample and the measurements of various variables. Remember, for your method sections, include just the information that's relevant for your study. What's relevant for everybody, for all of these studies, is like the sample size, how they got their data. But in terms of the instruments that are used, don't include the instruments that aren't part of your research question. So in terms of your research question, you might only be looking at a couple things, and there might have been 5, or like the emerging adulthood study could be dozens of different questionnaires. Don't include all the information for everything because you didn't use it. Just include information for the questionnaires that you're using for your research question. And that should be pretty straightforward. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to switch and just sort of talk a little bit about how to write the method section. And so here's how to write it. So the details are here in Canvas that you can get for your different studies. And then how to write it, this is the sample paper that I have a link to in the Writing the Introduction resources. That assignment, the resources for that, there's a link for a sample paper. This is the sample paper. So the method section is a new section. So method, and then it's called sample. So sample is basically you describe your sample. So how many people you got. If there's anything about recruitment, talk about recruitment. If there's nothing about recruitment, don't worry. So basically describe your sample as best you can with the information that you're given. And then the next subsection is instrument. I would say instruments here because probably most of you have several instruments, several questionnaires. So an instrument they're referring to can be a questionnaire. So I would say instruments because many of you will be using several questionnaires, at least a couple, if not more. Or even if you're describing interviews. And so if you're doing the romantic attachment study, the interview is the assessment of romantic attachment. So you can describe the interview here. Also the CAQ, which is the cards used to sort one's personality, which was used in the romantic attachment study. Even though it's not a standard questionnaire per se, but some cards, put that information here in instruments. And so these are the things that you get your data from. So I would do one paragraph for each thing. So If you have 3 questionnaires, have 3 paragraphs. Describe each questionnaire, how many questions. Refer to the appendix. So you will have an appendix. Your appendix will have the items, the questions from the instruments. I'll talk about the appendix in a little bit because I just don't want to go back and forth in terms of these pages. So refer to an appendix. Basically, each appendix should be a different questionnaire. So if you're doing questionnaires, Appendix A would be the first one, Appendix B is the second one, etc. And list all the questions. And you have access to the questions in the information that's in Blackboard. I'm sorry, in Canvas. So that's instruments. So some of the stuff that you see here, looking at some of this, if you see some statistical stuff and things like that here, don't worry about that. Just describe the questionnaires, interview, or the CAQ, the card sort for personality. So you're just describing things here. Method, describe the sample, so the people that you got data from. Describe your instruments, the things that you're using to measure your variables. For most of you, that will be it for your method. For those people who are doing the job applicant study, that is the only study here that has an experiment. So since it's an experiment, you need to have design. So if you're doing the job applicant study, you also want to have a subsection for design of the study. So you want to describe the experimental design. Is it between subjects, within subjects? Describe the levels of the IV. Describe the procedure that was used to collect the data. So the experimental design for those who are doing job applicant study. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the instruments, so questionnaires, if you have questionnaires, each questionnaire should have the questions in an appendix. And I'm going to skip way down here because the appendix goes down here. If you notice that the references are here. So as you've been writing your introduction, your references will be here. Oh, by the way, you are going to reference any questionnaires. So the questionnaire should have a reference to them for the questionnaire, and it will go into the reference section here. Actually, they don't have it here. That kind of is stupid. So the appendix comes after references, or appendices, I should say, come after references. And this is not a great sample in that sense that they don't have that there. So after your references, the last sentence of your references, start a new page. And you can format it like this. You can simply format it like this, like a table, but say Appendix A. And you can say something like Manipulation Tactics Questionnaire for the title of the appendix. You can create a little line here. And then what you can do is you can list the items, list the questions for that questionnaire. And again, have an appendix for each questionnaire. So if you have 3 questionnaires that you use, you're going to have Appendix A, Appendix B, Appendix C. Again, you just simply say Appendix A. The title will be the title of the questionnaire. You can create a little line, and you can just put the questions, list the questions down the page here. And that's pretty much what the appendix will be. So that's pretty much it for the method section. The method section should be the easiest thing to write because it's just basically technical. It's just giving information. So go ahead and take a stab at it. Draft it. There's going to be a lab with a draft for this. That's due in week number 5. And again, the information that you need should all be here in Canvas. And so that's it for the method section. So Let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, I will talk to you later.